Hi friends, welcome to the Share, Invite, and Proclaim channel. My name is Judy. I want to talk today about it's okay to age. It's okay to be old. Think about your circle of friends who are over 65. How many of them use cell phones instead of landlines? How many write letters rather than texts or email? How many of them have a little file of important recipes that have been passed down from friends or family? How many of them have a library of books, not just e-books or online information? How many friends do you have that travel no more than 1 hour from their home? How many of your friends cook at home 90% of the time? Not during this pandemic. How many of your friends have a collection of mementos for at least 2 generations at home? How many still have an antenna or a cable for their TV rather than streaming? How many friends do you have that are okay with the speed of their internet and they don't have to increase their costs by getting the latest speed? How many of your friends over 65 still have family pictures hanging on the wall? How many of your friends over 65 preserve family history? They tell stories about your childhood, or a famous story about a former relative who's passed on. How many used black and white TVs or black and white pictures as a child? How many of your friends over 65 used film for camera? And how many of your friends over 65 learned to use the computer as an adult? So I think to myself, well, how do I really keep up with the changes in technology, historical events or current events, education, transportation, and the medical field? I mean, I've gone from, in technology, I've gone from 8 tracks, 45s, vinyls, cassette CDs, digital photography and music, voicemail instead of memos. How many of your friends know about Zoom or FaceTime or Snapchat or Facebook? Our generation tends to use Facebook, if anything. And there are many more. I just don't know them all, nor do I care. In historical events, I've known about presidential elections back to Kennedy. I've witnessed a man on the moon, to space stations, to satellites that go past Mars. I have gone from just looking at the sky to knowing that our telescopes can see multiple universes. I can't fathom that concept. I've seen assassination attempts of Reagan, an assassination of Kennedy, and various diseases, flu-like diseases, SARS, or other multiple ones up to COVID-19. I've witnessed trade deals that have hurt the U.S. economy. I've witnessed terrorism. How many people do you know that watch the news on TV for hours on end? I've watched the expansion of our government, from creating new departments like Homeland Security. I've witnessed the change in the morals of our country. Most TV shows and cable shows today are R-rated. I've witnessed the decline of church attendance. We can't compete many times with sports that are on Sunday mornings. I'm talking about youth sports, kids sports, where they practice or play games on Sunday morning. I've witnessed a change in my rights, not our rights. It's the me society today. We've gone mostly from single housing homes to multiple complexes for renters. I've watched 2 impeachments of different presidents. I've been alive during the Korean War. My brother served in Vietnam, and then we have the current Afghanistan war that's been on for more than a decade. In education, I've seen so many online schools being created, but I've also seen a lack of respect for teachers, and this lack of respect is from students and parents. I've watched the decrease of the value of education for those who are struggling just to make it through the day. I've witnessed the tracking of students. It still happens today. It's just reformed in a different manner. I've watched the rewriting of history, and this bothers me the most since I was a history teacher. What happens is that new historians will make a statement, refer to somebody else as their defense or support. Now, neither one of them used primary sources to prove their point. So they're just really making their own opinion without any evidence. That bothers me. For training for teachers, I have to admit that. I was a literacy coach for 3 years, in which I found that 1/3 of the teachers are just very willing to change. They want to do what method is best for students. 1/3 are sort of in the wait and see period, where they've had multiple principals over time, and each principal wanted something different, and other things weren't followed through. And so they thought, why change if it's not going to work, or if it's not going to stay? So 1/3 of teachers are in that wait and see period. And then you have 1/3 of teachers that are not going to change for anybody or anything. Let me give you an example of this. I'm abstract random in my learning style. And my granddaughter is concrete sequential. When she asks a question, she wants it in sequence. And if I can't give it to her in sequence, she gets upset. Or I just use words or terms that are generational. For example, billfold. I used the word billfold once, and my granddaughter had no clue what I was talking about. And I said, oh, wallet. She said, oh, wallet. And then I had to explain to her why it was also called billfold. That's a generational thing. But teachers have to be aware of that. I used to have milk in kindergarten in glass bottles. That's a long, now it's an antique. And it surprised me that there are fast food options for students in high school in many of the large high schools. Now, there are always exceptions to these situations, and I acknowledge that, but this has been my experience. The federal regulations for schools is high, and state standards will tell the teachers what to teach, but the teachers have the flexibility of teaching it in their style, and hopefully they will make it in multiple ways that their students can learn. Now, in transportation, my first memory of a family car was the station wagon of the 1950s. We would travel on a U.S. highway. It would take about 20 hours to get to my grandma's house. And when the interstate system was created in the late 1950s by Eisenhower, that 20-hour trip was knocked down to about 8 or 9 hours, depending upon how many times we stopped. Cars today are built to run faster and faster. There's many regulations on transportation to cut down on emissions. Modern warfare uses modern transportation. You have multiple types of cars and colors, accessories. My dad's first car didn't have air conditioning, and so that is something that customers expect. Although for me, I think of it as an accessory that is greatly appreciated. In the medical field, we have new medicines to treat diseases like interferon, for example. In 1980, when my dad had lung cancer, interferon was it was an experimental drug, and he didn't have access to it. But today, interferon is a common kind of treatment with new additional kinds. Continued trials to come up with new medicines that will help us. There's even tests to help prevent diseases. Preventative testing, I guess is what it's called. And then we have this whole industry of supplements that didn't exist long ago. Diets by the hundreds. And professional advertising all the time to get us to try their method. We have plagues in other countries, but we have doctors and medicine and resources that we can send quickly to help prevent the spread of this plague. We have specialty hospitals, no longer the neighborhood hospital, but major hospitals in metro cities that are specialty, like a heart hospital or Trauma One hospital. The high cost of prescriptions, goodness me. Even with insurance, one medicine that I have to keep me out of the hospital, in the month of January, it cost me over $500. And then the rest of the year, it's $135 with my insurance for the rest of the year. I mean, think about those who cannot afford that medication that they end up dying. My point in all of this is that retirement can be positive and negative. Was retirement thrust upon you for some particular reason, or did you choose to retire? Income can drop when you retire. It can become static and fixed, and so you have a lot of issues to contend with. But there's 3 resources that helped me in my transition from my career to retirement. And the first was a counselor that I had. He was a biblical counselor, trained, licensed, experienced, and that helped. He knew the right questions to ask and resources to go to. A second resource I used was Dr. Henry Cloud's book on necessary endings. This was important because he talks about pruning. What are the things that you need to leave behind in order for new things to enter into your life? It might be pruning actions or relationships that need to end so the growth can occur. Another helpful book resource that I use is The Seasons of God by Dr. Richard Blackaby. And in his information, I found, I'm in the winter season of my life. It's a time of endings. My favorite reference that he uses is from Paul, the Apostle Paul, and he reflected on the seasons of his life and was able to say, I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. And we can feel comfort when we have lived well in earlier seasons of our life, in spring, summer, fall. Our relationships change in our winter seasons, and sometimes it's painful, but sometimes it's necessary. Blackaby says that friendships often shift when you go from one season to the next, and that's okay. For with God, he says, he gives us a new role, a new task, like using our experience so that we must give up an earlier role for the new role that God gives. And this has certainly been true for me. Believers can face confidence in their faith when death arrives, because Paul said to live is Christ and to die is gain. Eternity with Christ in heaven is our ultimate goal and home. In my stage of life, the winter stage, do I really need to keep up with those new advances in technology and historical events and current events and education and transportation? Only the ones I choose. There's no pressure for me. I have remembered the changes of my life, and most of them have been good. I feel joy where I am in my life. Old age is okay. Please share with those who need encouragement as they go from one season to the winter season. And I ask you subscribe so that you'll be notified of future videos. I hope that you can go to a church where it's Bible believing, where you hear about Jesus. I also hope that you can join a small group Bible study where you can grow in your faith. If you're not ready to face this winter season of your life and you're not sure about where you will spend eternity, think on this in Romans 10:9. If you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. I pray that you will pray and ask Jesus to come into your heart. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.